Welcome back to the Restricted Handling Daily Intel Brief. This is what's been going on in China in the past 24 hours. China's state shipping companies are changing how they collect Middle Eastern oil. Two of the country's largest tanker operators have kept their vessels out of both the Strait of Hormuz and Bab al-Mandeb since late July. Instead, the ships are collecting crude through transfers near Fujairah and Oman ports outside the Gulf and using alternative loading points such as Egypt's Mediterranean coast for some Saudi cargoes. This is a strategic rerouting decision, not a temporary captain's choice. The two companies previously carried roughly half of China's Middle East oil imports. They are accepting longer voyages, more waiting time, and lower fleet utilization because the government places a premium on avoiding attack, seizure, or an abrupt closure inside the choke points. The adaptation is also profitable for the protected carriers. Daily rates on the Oman-to-China route reached about $140,000, roughly 4 times pre-war levels. War risk is raising costs for Chinese refiners and consumers while creating margins for state-controlled shipping firms that can operate around the danger. The rerouting helps China preserve access, but it does not remove the need to use stored oil. Official data show that refineries processed about 12.5 million barrels per day in July. That was the first monthly increase since the Iran war began, but it was still almost 16% lower than a year earlier. Private estimates based on storage imagery suggest China drew roughly 25 to 28 million barrels from inventories in July. One estimate indicates another 26 million barrels had been withdrawn by August 17th. Those numbers do not line up neatly with official production, import, and processing data. Smaller refiners may be missing from the official balance, and the size of national reserves is secret. That means precision would be misleading. China appears to have deep buffers, and the current draw could continue for a long time. The important point is that the buffers are being used to smooth a sustained import shock. Beijing built energy resilience for exactly this kind of event, and now the system is being tested under real pressure. Premier Li Qiang is responding to a separate economic problem. He called for stabilizing external demand, expanding international cooperation, supporting jobs and incomes, encouraging private investment, and using both existing and new policy tools. This follows weak July data showing slower factory output, very limited retail growth, falling investment, and continued property stress. Yesterday's numbers established the imbalance. Today's development is the leadership response, and it remains selective. Beijing is supporting strategic manufacturing, emerging industries, infrastructure, and exports, while trying to prevent weak household confidence from becoming a larger employment shock. It is not signaling a household-centered stimulus big enough to remake the growth model. That approach can protect the annual growth target, but it also pushes more Chinese production toward foreign markets. Europe and the United States are likely to see that as excess capacity and a trade challenge. Beijing will present it as competitiveness, innovation, and the contribution of Chinese supply chains to global growth. China also has a diplomatic opening in South Korea. Foreign Minister Wang Yi will visit Seoul for 2 days in his first official trip there in 5 years. He is scheduled to meet President Lee Jae-myung, the National Security Advisor, and the Foreign Minister. The agenda includes bilateral relations, the Korean Peninsula, and preparation for the Asia-Pacific Economic Summit in Shenzhen later this year. The timing is unusually favorable for Beijing. Washington has abruptly ordered a major reduction in joint military exercises with South Korea and linked that decision partly to Seoul's refusal to support the war against Iran. South Korean leaders are now reassuring their own public that the alliance remains strong, while military planners wait for details. There is no evidence that South Korea is turning toward China. Beijing does not need a strategic pivot to gain something. It can present itself as predictable and economically useful, while Washington forces an ally to explain a security change that was not coordinated in advance. China can then test whether Seoul becomes more cautious on Taiwan, technology controls, missile defense, or trilateral cooperation with Japan. China's state media are already using the moment. They have repeated the American description of the exercises as costly and hostile, allowing Washington's own language to support Beijing's argument that regional militarization is unnecessary. At the same time, official coverage emphasizes Chinese and American business cooperation and portrays economic ties as stronger than the politics around them. The China-Russia border is producing another kind of structural change. Authorities are developing a drone bridge between Blagoveshchensk and Hihei for small, high-value cargo and planning trials of Chinese driverless trucks for heavier freight. Tests with safety drivers are expected next year, with fully autonomous operation possible in 2028. These are pilots, not functioning corridors. They still show that sanctions-era trade is moving beyond emergency substitution. Automated crossings could reduce bottlenecks, extend operating hours, and deepen Russia's reliance on Chinese vehicles, software, standards, and market access. Bilateral trade reached about $159 billion in the first 7 months, according to officials. Watch 4 things next. See whether state tankers resume any voyages through Hormuz or Bab al-Mandeb, whether oil stock draws accelerate into October, whether Lee's directives produce meaningful support for household demand, and whether Wang's meetings create a specific Korean security channel. China is adapting successfully in several areas, but each adaptation carries a cost: more expensive logistics, greater state direction, and deeper exposure to the political choices of partners. Thanks for listening. The headlines will keep coming, so we'll keep sorting signal from noise. Find the daily written brief at restrictedhandling.substack.com, and we'll be back with more tomorrow.